Donald Trump, who is the exact opposite of everything that we've ever seen, the doors have been flung open. You no longer, they've completely thrown that out the window. Anybody doing with the right message, working really hard and working their ass off can be elected to office. And that's what we're seeing that's changing the world of politics right now. You do not have to reflect and visual, you don't have to visually reflect the district. You just have to understand and be able to connect with people on what they care about, what they believe in, what their interests are, understand who they are and what they think and feel and breathe, and be able to recite that back so that you have a comprehension level, and that will actually aid you in getting elected. That impacts gays and lesbians and transgender folks, because there are so many people who live in districts across this country that may not be high volume districts for gay, lesbian, and transgender people, but they understand the district on a human level and can connect with people on a human level, and therefore they can run and win. And that's changing the world of politics.
Yeah, I was so interested to read profiles of Danica Rome where she said that, she wasn't running as a trans woman. She was running as someone who cared deeply about certain issues. And, so she talked about those issues, and she talked about those issues over and over, and her opponents wouldn't talk issues. They would try to smear her personally. And so that's such an interesting way to think about it, that I suppose that's always been true in politics, but to remember that it's the issues and the values that you're bringing to the office that matter.
So it's better to be uniting than dividing. And as Danica likes to say, discrimination is a disqualifier. You discriminate against somebody and you're disqualified from office, right? So Bob Marshall would come at her, even after the election. Bob Marshall continued to come at her and misgender her and stereotype her and try to denigrate who she was. And she would respond with, well, I want to fix, yes, I agree, we need to fix Route 28, or we need to expand Medicare or Medicaid, and we need to improve education in our state and infrastructure in our state. And that's the key. That's the absolute key. So the right message, the message that works, the not giving into the social issues and feeling as if that because somebody attacks you, you have to respond to that attack. And then saying to people and saying over and over again, you cannot, I'm going to be Teflon when it comes to this. If you're going to come at me with something that doesn't impact our district, then my response is going to be about the district. Mm-hmm. And even seeing on election night when the reporters would try to get her be negative about Bob Marshall, seeing the level of her response when they said to her, Bob Marshall is still coming at you with these attacks. What do you say to Bob Marshall? Her response was so beautiful in that Bob Marshall is now my constituent, and I don't talk negatively about my constituent. And hearing her say that, you could just see the impact that had on people. People are so tired of the attacks. They're so tired of the negativity and of the divisions that they're just hungry. Mm-hmm. They're hungry for the reality, right? 5 years ago, if you talked facts and you talked about political reality, and you wouldn't get very far. Now people are hungry for facts. They want to know that you're smart and that you're not Looney Tunes, right? That you know what you're talking about, that you care about what you're talking about, and that the things that you're talking about aren't just made up situations. And that, to me, gives me great joy.
Yeah, and it seems like that's the kind of thing that could have a sort of permanence, that people are seeing this example of, I too can run for office even if I don't look like the rest of, my district, and I can continue to talk about the issues. What I worry about not having sort of a permanence in politics is the resistance. So we're seeing
Uh-huh.
so many people right now so hungry for something to do, to be able to, help get out the vote efforts, and to have some meaningful way of contributing. Do you think that that's something that's going to continue, or will we see problems with maintaining a passion of the resistance movement if at some point we're not any longer resisting Trump? God help us, someday he will not be president.
Well, I'm with you on that, and I think that that's actually the pendulum will swing. We've seen it swinging. You know, we've seen it swing. We've watched it swing through our political reality, right? But I think the difference is that when I was being brought up, when I was growing up, my mom instilled in me the importance of being politically engaged. We lost to that for many years. We saw a huge drop off in the number of people who were actually voting. This election has done for us one good thing, and that is got those people back into this position that they will not allow their kids and the young people in this world right now walk away. They're going to start instilling in them the importance of being engaged, and that's what we've been missing for a long time. And we may see some drop off, but we're never going to win 100% of what we're looking for, right? We're not going to get there until we actually. And I'm seeing it's going to take us at least between 20 and 40 years to get to a place where we can actually rest.
Yeah. And so, what are some of the ways, we've talked about this a little bit on this podcast, but what are some of the ways that we can really encourage our children, especially our young children? I have a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old, sort of encourage them to be politically active and engaged so that that lesson sticks with them when they are old enough to be voting and running for office.
So we've taken our daughter with us to vote every single time that we voted. Like, we made a point of doing it as a family. We make a point of that she gets to actually vote too, even though she gets to they have head screens, right?
Mm.
And so we let her go through the process. She gets a clipboard when we go in. She gets to go through the same process that we go through, so that she can actually experience it. And that experience it will ingrain in her the importance of actually participating. My mom did it with me, and we're doing it with our daughter, and we're seeing other people do it with their kids. And I think when we do that, we're instilling the importance of participation. The other thing is that I have a pie in the sky hope. In Australia, if you don't vote, you get fined, and there's no excuse. If you're out of the country and during the election period, you actually have to go to the embassy and vote if you didn't vote before you left. So there is no excuse to not voting. In our country, it was actually the other way around. We didn't see a need or a reason to vote. And so now, thanks to the current economic and the current political climate that we're living in, you definitely have a reason to vote. You definitely. And we talk about it. Like, we talk about the reason that we're doing this. We talk about politics in our household. But my 6-year-old was 4 when I went to work for Bernie, and she knew that I was gone because I was working for Bernie, and she was voting for Bernie. She talked about wanting to vote for Bernie, and that's important. One of the keys that we do, one of the techniques we use in voter contact when we're out in the field talking to folks, especially during election periods, is we ask them to tell us their plan for voting. We ask them to say, we ask them pointed questions. So when do you go vote? Do you go before work or after work? And do you go with your family or without your family? Do you carpool? What is the process by which you go to vote? And we do that because we get people to think about it. As they think about it, the likelihood of actually following through increases. And so we push that. We push the plan making. We push the plan, the mental picturing of doing it. We do that with our kids as well. When we do that with our kids, then their likelihood of following through will take place and will happen. And so that's one of the things that we can do. The other thing is there are 2 barriers to voting. So there are 2 reasons people don't vote. They either don't know how to vote, or they don't have a personal connection to the candidate or the issue. And so telling people how to vote, showing people how to vote, talking through the process of voting and what to expect breaks down all those barriers. That's why the other side likes to pass laws that say you have to bring a state issued ID, and they put barriers up to the ballot box, where progressives take the barriers down by showing them what they should be doing and what should be happening. And we just have to continue doing that. We can't stop doing that. We can't stop talking about the importance of participation.
Yeah, I'll give a plug again for Postcards to Voters, which I've talked about on here a couple times now.
Are those the postcards that people fill out themselves, the commitment cards, or are those postcards to your friends and family? Because there's two different processes.
Yeah, so this is actually postcards that you write. So they're handwritten postcards, but they're written to strangers, so not just to friends and family. So Postcards to Voters is a website, and you can, once you're signed up, you can get addresses to send postcards to. So the most recent ones since Alabama I've done are in Georgia and Florida. So I've been sending, these are like state representative, state senate races. And I think that it does help with that sort of personal connection and having people think about voting, because you're going to stop and look at a hand-drawn postcard that shows up at your door. And, that way you sort of remember to sort of think about it. It's not going to probably change the way that you vote, but it will remind you that voting is happening and is important.
There's another key to it, and that was the other one that I brought up, because it's one of the elements and one of the things that we do on the door is we get people to fill out postcards while we're talking to them at the door that are commitments to vote. So when we get somebody that says, yes, I'm going to support Jane for state representative, we ask them, hey, will you fill out this postcard? And the card says, I am committing to voting for Jane. We ask them to put their address on it in their handwriting. And then the week before the election, we're going to mail it back to them to remind them of their commitment. Because if you remind people of a promise they made, they're going to follow through with it.
Yeah, that's really cool. I realize this is against the law, but it'd be great if you could like collect a deposit from them and be like, we'll give you your money back when you come and vote.
Yeah, no, we can't do that.
No, I fully recognize that's not a thing we can do, but
but what we can do is the flip side of that, which is to say, you can actually put an ad in a newspaper that everybody reads that says, these are the people in the neighborhood that actually vote. Don't you wish you were more like them? Right? And you can also mail people cards that said, hey, I noticed that unlike your neighbor, Jack Johnson, you didn't vote in the last election. We're hoping that you vote this time, right? And by the way, we're going to be watching, and we're going to let John Jackson know if he voted or not, right? And then have an example of a card that you're going to send to John Jackson that says, hey, John, these are the people in your community that didn't vote this last election. How do you feel about that, right? This is all social pressure, and it works. It feels ugly, and you got to take a shower afterwards, but it works.
Yeah, well, and there would be good ways to sort of put technology in with that. So they're sort of doing that with Facebook now. On election day, it'll say, tell your friends that you voted. And that's a certain form of social pressure. But yeah, it'd be great if you could, on Facebook or Twitter, be like, you didn't vote. Go vote right now. There's still an hour left.
Hey, that's the next stage. That is the next absolute stage. There's a part of me that I'm totally in favor of that, because for me, it's like people say that, a district is red because they've only voted for Republicans. Well, no, the district may not be red. It's just only 12% of the people that actually voted for this person, right? Mm-hmm. There's still 87% of the people who are registered to vote that didn't vote. And that's a bigger problem.
Mm-hmm. Well, that certainly seems to be part of what we saw in Alabama.
Yeah.
That just changing the voter turnout made such a huge difference.
And I think we're going to see that too. I mean, if you look at states that make it really easy to vote, like states like Oregon, Washington, and Colorado, where they have vote by mail, 100% vote by mail, where the state send you a ballot, and in some cases you have to have a stamp on it, some cases you don't.